Right now it's considered a developmental disorder that includes problems with social communication, meaning that some children with autism can speak and some cannot. Those that can speak often do still have challenges with social communication, like relating to other people, being able to have a conversation.
In the hospital, I assess a patient to determine if they need therapy while they're here, and if it's needed, then we try to work towards goals of maximizing their independence and having them be able to do what they need to do to go home or to whatever level of care they're going to.
They often work with children on self-help skills, and some children with autism might be a little slow in developing self-help skills. They might help them promote participation in the community settings, or just accomplish different small goals in the household that parents want to accomplish.
Some red flags that I might be thinking about in terms of whether or not this child might have an autism spectrum disorder. I would be looking in all of those areas of social communication and behaviors. So really restricted eye contact, so not using eye contact when the child is trying to communicate. I would be looking at if by the age of 1 the child really doesn't have any real words or doesn't have a lot of communication attempts, so they're not really using gestures or any kinds of sounds to try to communicate. We would look at their behavior, and with behavior we want to look at patterns so that it doesn't just happen one time and we think, oh, something's really wrong. But we want to look at, does this happen across time? Does it happen across different environments? Sometimes with feeding, children will restrict down to eating only one brand of a certain type of chicken nugget, or they maybe just have 2 or 3 foods that they will eat.
Young people end up often kind of reaching their developmental milestones in a different order or at a different pace than their typical peers would. So that means that they might not be talking at the same time or around the same time as typical peers would. They might not be walking or crawling or reaching for things or playing the way children their age would.
They typically have what are called restrictive and repetitive behaviors, and so that could be a number of things. Some kids might do hand flapping or rocking or walking back and forth because of their focus on particular things or restrictive schedules or things like that. They may have a tantrum.
So autism impacts a child and the child's family in a variety of ways. It can depend on the severity of that child's challenges, depending on where they sort of fall on that spectrum, which is why it is classified now as an autism spectrum disorder, recognizing that all children present a little bit differently. Some children can have some more minor problems in terms of being able to communicate, read nonverbal cues, or socially being able to participate in a social setting like a group or on a sports team, which can cause them to have challenges across a lot of what we as OTs think about as their occupations or their daily life functions: play, school roles, family roles, being a sibling, playing on the playground, participating in community events.
For example, some students have a really hard time making eye contact. Other students make eye contact really easily. Many of our students are nonverbal. And they use things like communication output devices to get their wants and needs met or to communicate with others.
So occupational therapy is a profession that's looking at a person's ability to participate in their daily activities. And it can look very different across different settings. So OTs work across the lifespan, from infants all the way to older adults. We work in a variety of settings in hospitals, schools, communities, homes, in all kinds of ways. And we're really just looking at what does this individual need and want to do in order to be successful in daily life, and helping to strategize with that person to figure out how to get them there. I work a lot in early intervention, serving the birth to 3 population, and in that population we often are part of talking with the families about getting a diagnosis, where we might start with them when the child is a year old, sometimes even younger, and we might be starting to see signs. The family might bring it up to us. So as the OT, I'm not diagnosing the child with autism, but I would be part of a conversation with the family about seeking out additional medical diagnostic services to determine if the child does fit those characteristics, because autism spectrum disorders is one of those diagnoses that is clinical based. So there's not a blood test, there's no genetic factors right now that are clear that say that this is the diagnosis. Children with autism spectrum disorders are often referred to occupational therapy. Well, it can be for a variety of reasons, but often it is because some of their occupations are being impacted, meaning that their function in their daily life, there are particular challenges that either the child or the child and family need support around. And it could be for social participation challenges that the child's having trouble making and keeping friends or knowing how to enter a group. It could be some of those sensory reasons that the child gets really overwhelmed with certain sensory input, or maybe is underwhelmed. So in either way, their response doesn't seem to fit the activity, and then they're not able to participate as fully or as successfully.
So the IEP is a legal document that outlines everything the child needs within their education to be successful. So if a child is eligible for occupational therapy services, it would be outlined in that plan. So they can either have direct occupational therapy services or indirect occupational therapy services. And direct means I would need to be spending time with them directly, generally each week. And consultative services means I'm working with their team, I'm providing strategies, I may be coming in to observe them, I'm following up, I'm making materials.
Sensory integration basically means a person's ability to take in information from all their senses, meaning movement, touch, sight, sound, smells, and really process and integrate that information with what they've already learned with the other senses in order to produce what's called an adaptive response, meaning can they respond in a way that is appropriate to the situation.
I work with a lot of my students on handwriting. That's kind of like a very traditional thing that occupational therapists do in the school. So we work on fine motor skills with our students. So handwriting is one of those fine motor skills. Other fine motor skills would be like, can they use their thumb and their index finger to pick up small objects that they need within their classroom. In our classrooms, we use an approach called structured teaching. And the students are spending a lot of time on their own doing these structured tasks, tasks that have a really clear beginning and end, and they're using a lot of really small manipulatives like erasers and figurines and coins, and so they need to be able to like use their hands effectively to do that stuff. They need to be able to use two hands together to like open and close their lunch boxes and their food containers, and remove and replace the lids of markers. So that's all like fine motor stuff that occupational therapists can address. So I'm working with a team, including the classroom teacher, the speech therapist, the social worker, and then each classroom has a behavior therapist. So I'm working with that team to provide strategies and supports that are going to be helpful for a student. So if a student has like sensory processing concerns, then I'll kind of provide some strategies to the team to help that student be more successful. Because maybe they need like noise canceling headphones if they're really sensitive to sound, or maybe they're like really seeking like gross motor movement, and they just need more movement throughout the day. So then we'll like schedule in sensory breaks where that student can take like a structured walk in the hall, or that student can do 20 jumping jacks and then go back to their work. Because some students really need that like gross motor input to be like grounded and focused in order to sit and complete their work.
But there's a lot of emerging areas of practice within OT in terms of school mental health. So looking at social emotional and psychosocial challenges that, bullying, again, some of those social participation issues that an OT could help address. Obesity is another big one that OTs can help look at the health and wellness of a child, support whole classrooms, or even in some cases entire schools or school districts with certain kinds of programming. And then certainly working on an individual basis with particular children, and consulting with that child's teacher to support the child's role in the classroom and in other school settings.
They can learn how to adapt, to communicate with people in a way that maybe doesn't feel natural to them, but they do it in order to have what they call neurotypicals. Like neurotypicals are, from an autistic perspective, are people who don't have a, maybe normal on the neurological spectrum. But a lot of adults with autism and young adults with autism believe that they, just because they're different neurologically doesn't mean that they're disabled, or it's more that neurotypicals need to learn how to respond to them better, is their perspective.